With the announcement of Dragon Ball FighterZ, I think it's about time we talk about some Dragon Ball games once again. After our top 10 list of the best Dragon Ball games of all time, it's time to look at the worst Dragon Ball games of all time. Let's hope Dragon Ball FighterZ doesn't repeat the mistakes of the past, but from the looks of it, it's gonna be pretty amazing. And number 10, Dragon Ball Z Battle of Z. This game has a good look to it, you know, over the shoulder, 3D fighter, but combat was a bit shallow. And it's one of those games where they gave the size priority and not the balance between characters. Every fighter must be balanced, and one of the hardest challenges for anime games is to have a huge roster, but at the same time be a balanced game. This game bet on the huge roster, but it's full of unbalanced characters, which made for a bad multiplayer experience because the whole thing was unbalanced. And when you were using AI teammates during, you know, the single player stuff, they were kind of useless. So yeah, gorgeous graphics, but unbalanced gameplay, and the camera work was also terrible. And number 9, Dragon Ball Z Legacy of Goku. On our top 10 best Dragon Ball games of all time, we featured Legacy of Goku 2 because it improved so much over the first game. Here it is, the first game of the top 10 worst Dragon Ball games of all time. So this is a Zelda-like RPG, but for an RPG of this type, it is extremely linear. You only get to play as Goku, which was a huge improvement in the second. Once they let you play as other characters, that was so good. But I think its biggest sin is that the game doesn't really capture the anime essence. It just feels more like a generic RPG rather than a Dragon Ball RPG. I love the backgrounds in this game, but the character animation work just wasn't there yet. So yeah, if you're into this type of game, I guess just Legacy of Goku 2 is the game you should be playing. Don't worry about not knowing the story, because it's Dragon Ball. You already know the story. And number 8, Dragon Ball Z Extreme Butoden. I kinda like the look of this one. The combat animations are very good, they are fluid, the game is fast, but it still made it to our list because the combat is kinda basic, despite looking good. You have a very limited roster of playable characters, despite them advertising a bigger roster, but you know, most of the characters ended up being support-only characters. That was a bummer, and this came out at a time where online mode is actually something that you expect out of video games, and this one didn't. You know, it's a fighting game. You kind of expect online. And number 7, Dragon Ball Z Sagas. I think just looking at the gameplay, you can already guess that this doesn't control very well. It's super sloppy. I don't even like the animations, even though some reviews praise the animation work done there. I don't like the textures, I don't like the game design, and on top of it all, you have this bad feeling game, and you're playing it in very monotonous missions. It's repetitive on top of that. Like, it commits so many sins, it's obviously on our list. And number 6, Dragon Ball Z Final Bout. I have very good memories of Final Bout, but when researching this video, I came across some bad reviews with stuff that I just really couldn't deny. First of all, the graphics were really good for the time. It may not look anything special right now, but this was gorgeous. Now, what these reviews criticized, and at the time, young Goku didn't really know what a good video game was, but you know, I can't say they're wrong in saying that the camera was kind of bad. Sometimes it moved away from the action in a way that was kind of jarring. Yes. I remember a bunch of friends using like very repetitive combos that kind of stun locked me in position from the beginning to the end of the fight, so it felt a bit unbalanced too. And I also remember trying to input controls and sometimes that stuff not working. So what I've read on reviews is that actually the control input is kind of laggy, which would explain why I had trouble executing some stuff. It didn't have a lot of moves, I remember that. Like, you learned a few combos and you kind of had it down for the whole game. At the time, it was great for my childlike mind. I didn't have to learn a bunch of different combos. But yeah, for a fighting game, judging it from today's standards, that's bad. You need variety. So yeah, despite me having very good memories of that game, it's hard to defend when faced with the facts. And number 5, Dragon Ball Z Taiketsu. This was the first Dragon Ball game on the Game Boy Advance with a lot of collectibles and extras, but it was a fighting game with very poor fighting mechanics. Look how stiff these character animations are. It was sort of a button mashy game on top of that, and it just doesn't feel polished at all. This could be something better. I think it needed more time in the oven before release. Probably. I'm not a developer. And number 4, the Dragon Ball Z collectible card game, also for the Game Boy Advance. On its own, using the Dragon Ball property for a collectible card game is already a turn off for me. Personal feelings aside, this collectible card game is actually pretty complex. and that's something you usually look for in a card game. But despite its complexity, the AI was very easy and predictable, and this was Game Boy Advance, so multiplayer wasn't really something that was easy to access. The game doesn't have a story mode, so it's a series of card battles against AI, pretty much. It's very slow paced, and I really don't think this looks any good, but hey, it's Game Boy Advance, so you can't bash it too much for the visuals. On the other hand, I think we feature the Game Boy Advance game on the best Dragon Ball games of all time, so maybe they could have done a better job. I don't know. At the number 3, Dragon Ball Z Kinect. Do I need to say any more? Alright, I will. It's repetitive. It likes some of the voice actors from the series, which, you know, it's always jarring when you see a character that you know and you've known for your entire life and all of a sudden it has a different voice. Right, Vegeta? The game is super unresponsive because, well, guess what? Kinect, right? Did I mention this game is for Kinect? Yeah. Number 3. At the number 2, Dragon Ball Z Ultimate Battle 22. You can really tell they put a lot of work into these backgrounds, right? Yeah, they're kinda dead and low resolution landscapes. So much work went into this. This game was really simple, really easy. It didn't really have a specific storyline. And if you're thinking, hey, this was a PlayStation 1 game, maybe at the time this didn't look that bad. Actually, all these sprites are recycled from an old Super Nintendo game. So yeah, it seems like they took some stuff from old games, did the minimum amount of work possible, and put it out on the PlayStation. Guess what? You get a bad game out of that. And at the number 1, Dragon Ball Z Evolution. I'm sure all of you guys have heard about the Dragon Ball Z Evolution, the live action movie. You know, the one that was terrible and didn't really have a lot to do with Dragon Ball at all. Well, guess what? Someone had the brilliant idea to make a video game adaptation from that. So yeah, the storyline follows the movie, so it doesn't have much to do with Dragon Ball Z either. And despite the gameplay sort of looking like the old school Budokai games, which hey, my favorite game of all time is still Budokai 3, so this seems in line for me. But actually you can beat the whole game by pretty much just smashing on the square button. Poor graphics, poor sound effects. Really, there's only one thing this game is good for. This game is really good to use as an example of how not to make a video game. And those were the 10 worst Dragon Ball games of all time. If you disagree with any of the entries on our list, make sure to let us know in the comments down below. We do have a lot of plans to cover Dragon Ball FighterZ in the future, so sit tight. As I've said previously, we're not in the business of being first, we're in the business of being right, and I think you guys are gonna love the content we have planned for you. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and if you want to watch the top 10 best Dragon Ball games of all time, click right there. If you're in the mood for something else, click right there. But as always, thank you very much for watching. My name is Goku, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!